Hi, I'm Lisanne Miller with W Cushing Company, and today you're in the dye kitchen with me. First, I want to thank Rug Cooking Magazine for this opportunity, and do not forget your latest issue of Rug Cooking Magazine, and the insert is the leaf pattern. And for those of you that have been following me on Facebook, I took my pattern and made it into a great runner, and I'm using my scraps. So let's see what you've done with the pattern insert. So great job. I hope everybody's enjoying it and enjoying this beautiful fall weather. Today we're going to talk about black walnut. I know that some of you have dyed with black walnut, have dyed with black walnut ground shells, but there's an easier way to do it and still get the same effect. About 2 years ago, we decided to introduce 5 new dyes, and one of them that I was really interested in developing and designing was black walnut. It does the same thing as using the black walnuts, but it is an acid dye, and it covers beautifully, it works beautifully, and it's a lot less mess in your kitchen. So we are going to over dye textures today, and we're also going to over dye linen today, so you can dye a black walnut background. So this is also black walnut, mummy brown. This is all covered. We're going to do a quick set dye in beautiful wool in the dye kitchen with me. So it is also in this book, available through Rug Cooking Magazine. What we're going to do today is we're going to over dye some textures and a solid. We've got maple, we've got perfect pastel plaid, some white, some heavy cream, and we're going to over dye it with this dye recipe. 1 teaspoon in 4 cups boiling water, half a teaspoon in 4 cups boiling water, and 1/4 teaspoon in 4 cups boiling water. Now this is if you're going to use yard pieces. I am using half yard pieces to show you so that it can go a little quicker. So if you're going to use it with less wool, you go down to 2 cups boiling water, which is what I'm going to do. But this is a great formula using the black walnut, but we're doing a quick set. So what I'm going to do, we're going to push this down for a minute, put this down, and we have our 2 cups here. We have our black walnut dye, and it is an acid dye, and we're going to go with a half. Okay, we're going to go with a half. 2/4 make a half. You need your math for this. We're going to go with 1/4. Okay. So we're going to go with a 1/4 and the end, but this is a half. I'm sorry, this is a full teaspoon. The first one was a full teaspoon. So we need 4 of these, or our new dye spoon. 2, that's 3, and now we're going to go with 4. So I have a full teaspoon in here, a half in here, and 1/4 in there. Now, when you're measuring out your dye, always make sure you keep what you're measuring in front of you in case it's a dye formula, so you know what's in your dye measuring cups. Now this is a quick set. As I said, this is a quick set. So I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of citric into each. Now mind you, we have a teaspoon, a half, and 1/4 of black walnut. I have put 1/4 teaspoon of citric into each. My water was boiling with my great electric tea kettle. And the electric tea kettle is fabulous because when you use the electric tea kettle, when it clicks off, it is the right temperature for your acid dye. And this is tap water. I'm using tap water. And I already have my pot started. So there we are. 2, 2, and 2. So in the pots, I have a very crowded amount of textured and dyed wool. As you can see, in my pot, it's very crowded. You want the pot to be crowded so it's mottled. And in the second pot, I have bleached linen that we're also going to over dye. So first we're going to go in with our timed quick set. So I have this. I've stirred it. Okay, they're all stirred, just like that. and I'm going to pour the first one. And I'm just going to pour it all the way around into here, just like that. I'm not too worried if I didn't cover it. Make sure it's all gone, and it is. Now I'm going to take my dye spoon, and I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And as I'm setting my timer for 10 minutes, I'm coming over here and I'm swirling the wool. I'm just swirling it once. Notice I didn't stir it. A stirred pot is not good in this. Okay? The second one that I'm going to do, after I click off, will have my half. This is my darkest one. And I'm not worried if it's not covered, okay? I'm just worried that it's in there. My citric is already in here. We don't have to set it again. As you can tell, it's simmering. It's not at a full boil. And it is taking up the dye, and at the end of the 5 minutes, we'll pour in the next one. Meanwhile, we have our linen sitting here, and this is the bleached linen. It is in here. There will be shrinkage on it. It will tighten up a little bit because you are boiling it. But meanwhile, while we're waiting, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to take my black walnut, okay, and I'm going to put, I have about a half a yard of linen in there, and I'm going to put 3/4 of a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon, and they're good 3/4 of a teaspoon, okay, into my 2-cup measure. And I'm going to fill it with the remainder of my boiling water from the tea kettle. So when I do that, I'm going to stir this, okay? I'm not going to quick set this one, but I've got it stirred. It's all well and good. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to put this in my linen. Now we want this to cover the linen, and that's all we're going to do for the linen. We want this to cover the linen. We want this somewhat mottled, not overly mottled, but we do want it to absorb. So this you can, if you like to stir the pot, this one you can definitely stir. And this will sit there like this, and as you can see, it's starting to come up. It already looks tea stained, and we haven't even set it yet. But I do want to make sure that this is kind of even, a little mottled maybe, not too mottled. If you wanted it darker, you can do a darker one, but there's a lot of dye in here. So now that I'm getting this and I'm cooking this, it's not going to boil. We still have it at a simmer, and it's covering it very nicely. There's some white spots, but it is folded. There we go. You bring up the other side. Yep, it's looking pretty good. And you're just going to let it sit for a little bit, a minute or two. And while this is absorbing the color, it won't absorb all of it. We are going to have to add citric to set it, but we're just going to let it, you'll watch and see how much it deepens in a little bit. It really will deepen quite nicely. Now you can go with a bigger pot. I went with a smaller pot because we're doing the demo. You can do it in a flat lasagna pan. You can do this in your turkey roaster. As you can see, we have huge pots you can do them with, and anything you would like to do with that. So we have the first one in. It's starting to boil a little bit. I'm going to take down the heat a little bit on that. And there it is. So this one, everybody wants to look. And as you can see, it's starting to look pretty good, starting to look pretty mottled. Not a lot of dye left in here, and that's your test. Yes, I said 10 minutes, but when the dye starts to get to this color, and as you can see, the black walnut took really well on that. Okay? And in here, we're also starting to get absorbed with color. And you can see it's getting a shade darker. Okay, so there we are. And it's okay to test it. Now this is really exhausted. This is the exhaust. It's exhausted pretty well. So you can actually start to think about pouring your second cup on the wool. And the second cup has the half a teaspoon in 2 cups of boiling water, and it could be in the 4 cups too. It's just we're doing a smaller pot. So we are at 6 or 7 minutes. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put my citric, and I do like to keep my citric in a separate container like this. I do like it to have the seal on it because I really think that it needs to be sealed. And I always keep my quarter spoon in here. So I'm going to sprinkle in a quarter of the citric because I want to start to set my linen. The wool is still going on. We're still not at the 10 minutes, but we're getting closer. And after I add my citric to the linen, I'm going to give it a good stir. Remember, we want this a little more even than we do the wool. We like mottled wool, but when we dye our linen, and you can hook on this after it's dyed. Once it's dry, you can draw on it, draw your pattern on it, and be able to use it for rug hooking. You also get a facial with all the steam, which is lovely out of this, so it all works really, really well. The exhaust on this is just about done. Our exhaust is so light, it's almost golden, so it did exhaust very quickly. Again, it is a quick set. So we are going to go into our second one. We are at 8 minutes. So at 8 minutes, we're going to add our second dose. Now this is 1/2 teaspoon in 2 cups boiling water. Okay? And I'm going to pour it onto the second one, just like that. And I'm going to do that like that. Make sure that it all gets in there like it's supposed to. And it did. Come back into here. Now I want to make sure that in my folds and in my fabric that I get the second one in. And I want to make sure that I don't have any white showing or anything, but that's all I'm going to do with it. This is a quick set. We don't add any more citric to it. So this is our second one. We've got it set for 6 minutes. This is now going down. We have put the citric acid into here. So now this is really starting to set and take on its color. The black walnut is giving it a very nice aged look. This is going along fine. We're waiting for the second one. And while we're waiting for them, this right here is just a small sample of what you can do. You may have pink that you don't like. You may have little nibs and nabs. They don't have to be in full yard pieces. They can be green. They can be any color you want to age. You may have a hideous plaid that you got as somebody gave you as a skirt. You can do anything you would like. I chose these because I was really curious on how this perfect pastel plaid would over dye. Would the colors come out? Would there be plum and green that came out with the black walnut? Maple is another one. It's got a lot of tones in it, so it's a lot of fun. And these are just solids. This is our cream that we over dye on. So just a fun group of things to do. Now, if you are doing a bigger bunch, then you would go to the 4 cups. I use the 2 cups because I use the smaller pot, but with the bigger pot, you are going to use 4 cups. So, there we go. We have one more left, and we're at, well, we've only been in for about 2 or 3 minutes. Things that can affect your dye, your water, humidity, your measuring, make sure you're measuring, and make sure that your water is at a full boil. The electric tea kettle, you can get it on Amazon, it'll be delivered to you, get a good one, but make sure that when that clicks off, that's what you mix your dye with. Make sure you mix it thoroughly. If you're doing the quick set, you do have to make sure that the citric is in there and mixed in there. If it's not, it will settle to the bottom, and then it doesn't get into the dye bath, and then it doesn't set on the wool. Now, why would you want to dye your linen? Well, maybe you don't want a hook background, or maybe you're going to punch and you're punching a pillow, but you don't want to use the white linen, or you don't want to use the unbleached linen. Maybe you just want something a little different. Maybe it's going to be a wall hanging. So these are different ways. Instead of painting your linen, you can do it in one pot and get your linen modeled and get it done. If you don't like the color and you wanted a deeper color, you can put it back in. Just make sure that your linen does not come to a full boil. It just has to simmer, but not to a full boil. So we are just about ready to put our last one in. So just as we're getting ready to put our last 2-cup measure in, let's go back and look at how much our linen has changed. Our linen is really a beautiful color. Yes, it's almost the color of the unbleached, but it will get darker as it sits. And this should cook. Your linen should cook a little more than your wool. It should be on here for 25 to 35 minutes. Don't worry, I won't talk for that entire time. But it should be on there for that long. This gives you a nice aged look. And then we're in here, and look at this. We've got this golden yellow coming out of the walnut. The walnut is almost all exhausted. That's great. So that means it's about time to put the last one in. So we will put the last one in. And if you wanted this darker or deeper or grayer, you can change it. In the book Beautiful Wool, I go over dyeing with khaki, khaki drab, mummy brown, and spice brown. But I really do like the black walnut because it does age nicely. So we're just about ready now. The timer went off to pour in our last 2 cups. I have stirred it, it's still steaming, and I'm going to pour it into the last batch. Now this is the last batch to go into the dye bath. This is your dye bath. This is the wool. It's getting darker, and it's looking very nice. This will make an awesome primitive background or an antique background. It will make nice highlight lines. If you're using reds or doing poppies, these are the browns you need. If you're doing a Santa suit, these are the browns that you need to put the highlights in, because when you use red, the best color to use for a highlight is brown. So that is in. This is still going along very nicely. And now I'm going to set my timer, and make sure you have a good timer for another 5 minutes. So we don't have to wait until they're all done and then spin them dry and put them in the dryer. We've gone ahead and I dyed some ahead of time. And by dyeing them ahead of time, you get to see them. So this is what you get. Here is your black walnut. This is the black walnut background, we call it. And see all the tones and colors. And that was dyed on the perfect pastel plaid. Yes, you can still see the texture a little bit, but look at all the greens and the plums and everything that come forward. It looks fantastic. Maple had a really nice warmness to it. So your maple, this was maple. Put that there for a minute. Here's your maple. And look at the warmth. It's a little bit warmer, not as deep, and beautiful greens come out. Just a lovely, lovely piece. Nice to use for just about anything, especially this time of year. If you're hooking trees, this really makes beautiful trees. The white wool, this is the white wool. And the white wool is very, you don't know how it's going to take. You don't think, is it going to be too dark? What's going to happen? But look at all the beautiful colors that have come out. And in the golds that I showed you in the exhaust are in this. A lot of modeling, very nicely done. And that's on the white wool. This was done over a texture. This was done over a texture called rosy that we have. And then the cream colored, we have this nice thick, it's kind of a odd color. It's kind of nice. It's warm. Got a little bit of beige, a little bit of taupe, but it really brought out green and a lot of gold. So that is that one. So just to recap, here we are. Here's the white, and here's the difference with the white, a little darker because it's on the cream or white, whatever you want to call it. Here we are on maple. There's the maple, a little darker, and then here we are on the perfect pastel plaid. So there we go. There's your wools. And of course these were all done in a larger pot, but they were a lot of fun to do. And the colors just look great. Now let's look at the linen. Here is one that was done. This is Wilhelmina, perfect for October, so happy October. And this was the black walnut background with our Wilhelmina pattern. So as you can see, it is modeled, but more solid. You can see some of the colors coming out in it, and then you just hook on it. So this is the linen dyed. So happy October, everybody. I hope you have a great fall season. We'll see you next in November. We may alter it due to Thanksgiving, but I hope everybody has a great fall. And we will see you again in November. Thank you and be well. Bye-bye now.